So welcome. So today we're going to be talking through document automation, how to run a more efficient firm. It's going to be primarily geared toward attorneys, and we're going to talk, kind of through streamlining your intake process through creating documents. My name, if you don't know me, Brian Papalardo. I run Leadli, which is we don't call it an all-in-one, but it's a most-in-one automation platform that can kind of help with intake, stuff like that. And then I'm joined with Brittany Hernandez. She's from Gavel. She's a lawyer herself, head of, what's her title? Head of Legal Innovation?
Yes, head of legal innovation.
At Gavel.
Yep.
And Gavel is a really impressive piece of software for document automation that Brittany's excited to show. So I'll hand it off to you, Brittany. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you hosting me today. So today we're really going to talk about the idea of the efficient law firm, how we can go for all the way from streamlined client intake, lead generation, through to automated document drafting, thinking about the overall client experience and how we walk them through being a stranger to us, they don't know us yet, to getting them onboarded or pulling them into through marketing efforts, our world, getting their email, and having them be on a call with us, kind of going through all of those different steps. How can we do that in a very strategic and streamlined way to make it to where all of that data that we collect about them is something that we can repurpose and reuse in the future in our documents, for example, and everywhere else in our communications with them. And so we can make that really a personalized experience. So I wanted to first really touch on this idea of understanding integrations, how we can think about how data can flow from two systems that are disconnected from each other. How do we connect those two things together, and why is that important? And then we're going to talk about strategic lead generation and client intake using Leadli and why you would want to use that tool. Automated document drafting using Gavel, why you would use that tool and what are the differences between these two tools. And then I want to go through a live example of how you would actually automate a document using Gavel's generative AI feature called Blueprint. So let's first go into this kind of category of understanding integrations. When we use the word integration, what we're talking about is that idea of taking two companies that have been created separately from each other. We have Leadli in this example and Gavel in this example. We haven't consulted with each other on how we build them, but we want data to pass through from one to the other or back and forth, and have these two things have the ability to talk to each other. So an integration is something that is built by one or the other company or both to make it easier for two systems that were built by different companies, different teams, to talk to each other and pass data back and forth. So when we're talking about integrations, that's what we mean. And Brian has been so generous to create a Gavel integration within Leadli that makes it to where you're able to pass information from Leadli into Gavel. Now, we talked about Leadli being kind of more on the customer relationship management, matter management, client management side of the house. And what Gavel is it's a robust document automation platform for lawyers. So we can take all of that data and then use that in a lot of different ways within your documents, and then add even more functionality and robustness to that with things like calculations, date and number calculations, advanced invisible logic, repeating items, being able to do a lot more because Leadli is already doing so much on the front end, but Gavel focuses on this document automation piece, so we can add a lot more features and ability to generate very niche circumstances and use cases as needed. So I want to go over a little tour of what each of these platforms look like and the functionality of each one, so you can kind of get a sense of when you would use one and when you would use the other. So right now we're in a Leadli account. So here you can make your dashboard, you can see kind of what different things you want on here. Mine is obviously a dummy account, so I don't have like opportunity status and values you can see here, but you would be able to see those types of things within Leadli. Your different conversations that you're having, you can manage your calendar, you can see your calendar. You can also have your booking calendar through here so that you can have that sent out to potential new clients or have that on your website, for example. You can also manage things like contacts, All of your different contacts can be here. Your opportunities, such as having a pipeline to see where different people are in the stage and how much that amounts to. For here, for example, taking payments. There's so many different things you can do in here. That's why he was kind of saying it's like a mostly all-in-one. Or what? How did you describe it? Not an all-in-one, but a most-in-one.
Yeah, most in one.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of things that you can do within here, even within your marketing. You can have a site that's through here. My favorite feature that's going to be most relevant to us today is this automation feature. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have used tools like Make or Zapier, and these are tools that are similar to what I was saying, where you can connect two different things together, but it's another subscription in another separate place that you have to go in order to connect things. So for example, if you wanted to take lead generated information from Facebook and put that into Gavel, for example, you would have to go have another subscription. But within Leadli, they've created this kind of native automation piece here where you can have that same type of trigger and action happen here. So when a contact has a birthday, send them a text that says, "Happy birthday, here's 10% off your next month," if Brian's feeling generous. Galen said, when I type in Leadli, it's not taking me to your site. I think it's leadli.co, right?
.co, yeah.
Yeah, leadli.co.
And Brittany, let me just
go ahead.
like a little bit of flavor here, if you don't mind. So there's kind of a couple things that I'd like to just sort of throw out here especially for attorneys. So the first is, we work with a bunch of attorneys who have a little bit of like a spaghetti of software. So what I mean by that is they're using something like Calendly for somebody to, schedule an appointment with them on their website. They're using, Constant Contact or something like that to send emails. They're using Ring Central for their phone and text. They're using, Cognito Forms or something like that for their forms. And then they're using a practice management system, something like an Action Step or Lawmatics or Locus or Clio or any one of a dozen services that are in that space. So one of the things that just immediately off the bat is we consolidate a lot of that into one system. And then as you were talking about, we have an automation system at the core of it. So we're able to say when somebody schedules an estate planning discovery call, we want to then trigger a few emails that go out before then. We might want to educate them. We encourage people to set up videos. So you have a video funnel where they go through and they learn, what is a will? What is a trust? That way you're not spending that discovery call having the same conversation over and over about well, what's the difference between a will and a trust? We don't want you to have that. We want them to come in already ready to roll. And also we do like a pre-intake form, right? You want some basic information. Do they have $5,000? Do they have $5 million? You're going to treat that conversation very differently based on that, right? So the automation platform handles all of that. And there's a lot that Leadli does really, really well. There's a few places where there's other software that does it better, right? So we have like a document contract sort of area for like a simple retainer agreement or something. It's fine. For, if we're going to be doing advanced documents or even like a retainer agreement that requires multiple signatures or something like that, that can be tricky through an automation. And that's where like somebody like Gavel can come in. So, anything inside of our system can be a trigger and then it can push information into Gavel. So I just wanted to kind of like do that. I don't want to get too far into the weeds of this feature, this feature, this feature. If you're interested, schedule a call. Happy to show you, everything going on there. But wanted to just kind of say that at a certain point, you're going to want to send information. You're going to get back a complicated document. And that's kind of how those systems play well together. And, we've set that up. So you just define the trigger, it kicks it over there, and then it does the rest of the magic inside of Gavel.
Exactly. And another great question is, can you send text instead of emails from within Leadli from the automation?
Yep.
Yeah. So you have a place for the person's phone number in your contact area. And I'll just quickly show you what this looks like, because I think this is a really good question and it will sort of lead us into the next piece of this as well. And I appreciate all the questions. Feel free, like Galen is doing here, to add your questions directly in the chat, and we'll just pick them up as they make sense through the presentation. So in this section, for example, I'm going to just show you what it looks like when you have an automation. So like I talked about, when you click on that area in automations in here, this section here, and you say create a workflow, you're going to get into a section that looks like this. and you have the ability to add triggers and actions. So like I said, in the context of like a Zapier or a Make, that's the same thing you could do. You say, when this happens, I want you to do these other things, either within this tool itself or in all these other different tools. So in my case right now, I have a trigger that says, if the pipeline stage is changed to ready for engagement, then I want you to automatically populate a workflow in Gavel that's going to generate that document. And I have all of the fields mapped over from pulling the information that's stored about my contacts and their matters in Leadli, and I'm having them get pulled automatically into a Gavel workflow so it can populate the document. And then I say, have another action after you're done doing that adds a task to my contact, telling me that I need to review and send that for signature. And I have that send me the continuation link as well, because I could pull that information. And a continuation link is just a way of saying, so that I don't have to go between different systems, I could just click on that link and finish reviewing and send it off for signature. So what that could look like, for example, is that in this particular case, I have all of the information that has pulled through. Let's say I moved the stage in Leadli from the opportunity under here where my pipelines live, and I moved the person from here to here. Then that's going to trigger that automation to run and pull the information about that contact and their matter as much as they can, because as Brian mentioned, there's going to be some things that you don't want to have to map one-to-one for everything, because not all of the compatibility lies there. For example, with repeating items, you want to kind of work on those where you don't know if you have 0 children or 10 children for each person, and you need to be able to add as many as you need to for each separate matter. So instead of having a bunch of let's say custom fields that are going to try to map over one-to-one, you can pull whatever information you can to reduce that amount of manual data entry, and then from there, fill in any additional information. So in this particular case, I have Demetria demonstration who's ready for engagement. Her information is pulling through with her mailing address and her email, and then I can just answer any additional questions that I haven't already answered by continuing from where it picked up or left off. After it ran that initial trigger that said, pull anything you can that I have that lived in Leadli and put it over here in this workflow in Gavel. I click on that link because it added that task, and then I just fill out the additional information. For example, I'm preparing an engagement agreement. I've filled out the client's information that was already pulled through. I have my matter or title information, and then I could just add any services that I'm going to be performing for them. This is that example of a repeating item that I mentioned, where I might want to have one thing that I'm doing for them or multiple things that I'm doing for them. And in this particular example, I'm using something called a combo box, which is a combination of the ability to choose from different options that are like if I kind of do the same work over and over, I can just choose from the menu, or I can type in a response if I'm doing something bespoke or new for this person. I can continue. Now I can go through and put any excluded services. So I'm going to be preparing the power of attorney, but I'm not going to do any litigation that's resulting from anything that's related to this one that I drafted for them. So once I've done that, I can go through, and I have this set up to be also integrated with DocuSign. So I have this streamlined flow from the information that was collected within Leadli, pulling through to Gavel, and then automatically being able to send that off for DocuSign signature without having to retype any information that I already have, because I have some that already live somewhere, and then I just need to add any additional pieces that I don't have stored there, for example. And then I can just continue, and I can review this before I submit this for signature. So I can see that my template has pulled through. The date has automatically pulled through, the client's name and email, the title of the matter. I can have their name be in different combinations, such as their first and last name, their prefix and their last name, all throughout, happening automatically. I could also have, if I wanted to, some logic around the signature block. So for example, if I want the responsible attorney's information to show here, or whoever is assigned to that contact to have their signature block show here, I can do that as well. And we'll get into kind of like the word add-in and how to play with logic and stuff a little bit later on. But just to show you can go through and see if there was more than one piece here for the services, litigation. In this particular example, I'm just using a template that's a pro bono. So you could have a section for compensation. And if you store that in your matter, which you do, you could pull that information through from Leadli as well. Once I'm satisfied that that's ready to go, all I have to do is say submit for signing, and that's going to get sent off for DocuSign signature. And then I can mark that task off in Leadli as done. So that's how we're able to keep these two very tightly integrated together. Another cool example of this would be when you actually want to prepare outside of an engagement agreement, something that has like a deed, for example. So an engagement agreement can be fairly straightforward, right? You have different pieces of information, but if you want to have like a master deed, for example, or you want to be able to prepare several different types of deeds or like choose from several types of deeds all at once. For example, if you have originally, when I was putting this one together, I pulled this example from, or got the templates from somebody who's a joint Leadli and Gavel user who used to have all of her templates for each of these things separately. But what you can do is you can combine those into a master document where there's just different language that will change depending on which you choose. So leveraging the ability to use the logic here, if I say quitclaim versus warranty, then different language will show and hide in the document. And maybe I'll get asked different questions throughout here as well. But what you can also do here is pull this information in from Leadli if I have it stored there as well. Looks like people are just joining us here as well. So I'll let them in really quick. Hi guys, welcome. We're a little bit far into it, but I will be sending the recording out to everyone afterwards. So don't worry if you missed anything right now. Right now, we're just really talking about this idea of understanding how two systems can talk to each other and what the different functionality is between Leadli as more of a kind of so many different pieces of the customer relationship management process, all the way from marketing through to like booking calendars, through to, matter and contact management, all of these different pieces. And then for Gavel, you're able to, through the integration and that native automation piece that I was showing you, you're able to trigger something. Trigger, for example, like I showed you here, when I move the person from one stage in the pipeline to another, I want you to fill out and populate a Gavel workflow that will populate an engagement agreement. Give me the continuation link that I can just click on from within Leadli and then continue to answer any additional questions that I need to. And then maybe when you're done, you can have it to where it's automatically, the documents are automatically emailed to you, or like in the case that I just showed you, have them automatically sent off for DocuSign signature, being sent to the client via their email automatically first, and then maybe going to the responsible attorney or whomever else. So in this case, like I mentioned, if we have like this information getting pulled through from our contact here, then we can say, when I say that I want to generate a deed, like if I check this box and save, then I want to trigger the action of this workflow being run. And then if all of the different pieces of information are already pulling through, then there's not really much else you need to do besides making sure that that's all correct and then generating that deed document. So like I said, in this particular example, you can set this up in lots of different ways. In one way, you could have it to where you have conditions around each document and when they populate. So you could have separate documents. And then you could say, if I choose to do a quitclaim deed on the first question, then only show me a quitclaim deed at the end. But what that means is that instead of doing it, if you do it that way, that means you have to like kind of go through and tag and automate a lot of the same types of things in that document. That might make more sense to take those 5 different types of deeds, consolidate them into a master template where you just have to automate that one document and you're going through and deciding which pieces change depending on which type of deed you're trying to prepare, because the structure will be the same, or a lot of the wording will be similar, but you're having there be something called variables. So a variable is where a part of the document will be different depending on choices made in the questionnaire side. So if I said quitclaim, then it would say quitclaim here instead of warranty. Within this, you can also have that logic piece where, for example, I could say only show this part of this phrase in this clause, for example, if I said I wanted it to be a special warranty deed, or only show this other section if I said it was a quitclaim or a regular warranty deed or whatever else. So you get to choose how that what that logic is depending on your expertise. And that's why we wanted to be able to create something that puts that control and power into your hands, into how this document gets generated at the end of the day. So I wanted to quickly, now that we have a couple other people here in here as well, please feel free. I know it'll be hard to catch up because we kind of covered a lot of material already, but like I said, I'll send out the recording so you can kind of catch up from where you from what you missed. But right now we're going into this section around strategic lead generation and client intake. And the reason why I say strategic is because of the ability, and now you know the possibility of reusing and repurposing information, but also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian here, but seeing and pulling insights and analytics about where people came from. So like if they came from Facebook, or if they came from your website, or how many people completed your quiz or your form, or all those different pieces. Do you want to chime in there, Brian?
Yeah, exactly. So, like Brittany said, the real thing that we're trying to do here is just make it so that you're not spending all of your day typing in to a Word document or to a CRM or to whatever. Things are just happening, right? So, for instance, one of the things like that we set up is we encourage our clients, and we do kind of a sort of a white glove setup. We only really take about 3 clients at a time to help build out their account. And then we sit down, get to know your business, build this out so that it's really customized for you. It's, some companies will just kind of high five, welcome to the club, figure it out yourself. We don't take that approach at all. And so the idea here is you have a discovery call. Again, I'll use estate planning as an example. You'll have a discovery call. We'll send you an email right afterward with a link to a form, fills in the person's information that you just met with, and it'll say, hey, you just met with Brian. Did they show? Did they not show? Great, they showed. Are they going to move forward? Yes, no. Do we need to, collect some additional information that can trigger an additional form to go out to collect a little more information? Whenever you have the information that you need to get started creating the Gavel document, it can just send it to Gavel. And you've done, you've selected a couple of multiple choice boxes, hit submit, and that's kind of it. And that's really where we want you to live, so that you can then, move from one client to another client to another client, pretty easily, and not have to spend, an hour in data entry in between all of these. Now, as far as like reporting and all of that, depending on where they came from, if you got people coming in from Facebook, from Google, from organic search, whatever, we can, have basic analytics on all of that, attribution tracking on all of that. So we can give you a pretty good idea of, hey, you've paid somebody, $2,000 to run Facebook ads for you. Is it paying off? Is it not paying off? 1,000%. And, we can also move stuff through a pipeline. So, somebody might schedule their discovery call, and then they might need to think about it. You might send out a contract, and then it's ready to push into your depending on how your business is set up, like you might push it into a practice management system, like an action step or something like that. But we've got then reporting in the same way we're able to push information into these systems, we can then receive it as well. So all your stuff stays, in sync, and exactly, okay, we've got 10 things that we need to focus on today. There's $20,000 in the pipeline. Let's get to it today.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying that a little bit as well. I appreciate that. Yeah. Let me go ahead and replace the spotlight really quick. So next piece I want to talk about is, when we talked in the beginning, I talked about following the client's journey from they've never heard of us to discovering us to talking to us, on their appointment, how they can then be engaged, and then we deliver our services. So thinking about however you map out your own process and whatever you do, there's always going to be that element of how do we get leads. And then from that very initial, the one thing that I want everyone to learn from me, if I ever say anything important, is thinking about it from the very first moment that you collect their information. Doing that in a strategic way is really, really, really important. And one of the ways that you can combine the ability to intake client information in a strategic way, but also serve as a lead generation tool, is this idea of having a lead magnet, or a way, and obviously Brian's going to be the expert on marketing more than me, but the idea being that you give something a little bit of value away for free in exchange for an email, so that you can then nurture them as a lead, so that when you actually, when they actually make the decision to work with you, you've had that consistent communication with them, and it's automatically triggered through these different pieces and automations. So one example of that is from that same kind of person that I mentioned who gave me the templates for the deed. The way that she does it is she has a 60-second quiz where people can discover the benefits that their parents are likely missing out on. So they answer 5 questions, and then at the end it says, where should we send the results to? So they ask a couple questions like, do my parents need Medicaid if they already have Medicare? Then they answer yes or no. They ask another question. There's another question. And at the end, they are asked for their information. That is a really good example of a lead magnet that has strategic client intake, because this quiz or this funnel that we have here is attracting them to your website because it's going to give them a piece of valuable information, which is, are my parents missing out on some benefits that I should let them know about? But also exchanging that value for the email address and the person's name, which gets stored in Leadli in a way that can be repurposed into the documents, as I showed you through that integration. So that's why I'm saying it's so important to think about how we gather information and data from the beginning, so that it's always something that we can reuse later. So the way that they have it set up, or she has it set up, is that once they submit the quiz, they're taken to a piece or a landing page that says, thank you for taking our quiz. If you want to book a free consultation, click here or learn more. So the potential new client can schedule a call directly from the landing page. And that is using the appointment calendar from within Leadli, so that they can book that consultation. All that information stays in the kind of contact and matter information that we can then repurpose and reuse later. So you can see how this flow is really, really important. There's a little bit more of a complex automation on this particular example, but just to show you that it's similar tracking with what I showed you, where you have, when this thing happens, then do this. But if I want, but if they answer question 5 as no, then show this. So Brian can help you get all that set up. It doesn't have to be as complex with all these math operations, but the way that they wanted, that she specifically wanted to have this set up, had a little bit more flow to it. But just the idea being that you have on the front end something that seems, of value, that's going to provide them some answers. It's going to run through and be stored in a way that we can reuse and repurpose later. On the back end within Leadli, there's all these different calculations and automations running, because so it would say something like, when the quiz is submitted, then I want you to do all of this figuring. And then I want you to send an email to the person with their results. So the person gets an email saying, you answered 3 out of 5 questions correctly. You answered these 3 correctly, but these 2 were incorrect. And here's the answer of no, not necessarily. The state's entitled to a lien on a probate property, blah, blah, blah. Schedule an appointment that would still feed them through into that same CRM cycle. So that's why we want to think about, how are we collecting information from the beginning? Can we utilize subscriptions that we already have, like a Leadli or Gavel, for example, to create valuable content that will serve as a lead magnet and still feed into our systems in a useful and productive way? So those are the questions I want you to be thinking about as you're thinking about, which systems am I using? How do they work well with other tools? And how can I use them as early in the process as I possibly can, to not only provide value to my clients, but also collect the information in a way that's more strategic than something that's less usable or repurposable in the future.
And
So
Brittany,
yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
can I just jump in for like half a second here?
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like about Leadly and what we encourage our customers to do is like if the way that most firms probably would set something like that up is their website would be on like WordPress or Squarespace or whatever. So they would just use like the native WordPress or Squarespace like form to collect the information. They would use something like, maybe it would integrate with like a MailChimp or Constant Contact or something like that to send the result out. Um, one of the things that, and then they'd maybe use Calendly to schedule the appointment. So all the buttons saying, hey, schedule an appointment. One of the things that's really powerful about having all of this stuff in one place is that, inside of the automation tool, we're able to say, okay, when somebody fills this out, we want them to schedule an appointment. So we're going to give them the deliver the quiz results, but also we're going to follow up with them every X number of days or X number of weeks, whatever that is. But the second that they schedule the appointment, we want that to stop, right? So we don't want to then bug them after they've done the thing. So we're able, because we have the calendars, because we have the forms, because we have the email marketing, all of that's in one system and it's all powered by the same automation engine. We're able to not do stupid things like after they schedule an appointment, keep asking them to schedule an appointment or something like that. That becomes really hard to do if you're trying to kind of like put together like a Franken system of like, okay, I got my CRM, I've got my form, like I'm using Typeform or whatever, I'm using MailChimp over here. That becomes really hard to get all of those systems marching in the same direction. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because I think you're exactly right that that's a really great like lead generation strategy, but it's also important to have the right tech under the hood to not then kind of waste it by like, having a sort of a poorly optimized process and sending people stuff that's not relevant to them or that they've asking them to do something they've already done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Thanks for pointing that out because I forgot to mention that one piece, which is around the nurture strategy afterwards and all of the different things you should be thinking about at that point. So when we talk about a nurture strategy, obviously what we're talking about is building trust with these particular new clients where maybe they like interacted with our quiz, but they didn't schedule an appointment at those two different points where we called them to action. When they first finished the quiz, we said, hey, schedule an appointment now if you want to learn more. Maybe they wanted to go and actually look at their results first and like consider it or think about it. And then maybe if they looked at the results but didn't schedule an appointment there, then after maybe it like delays and waits a day and then sends them an email to say, hey, we noticed that you didn't schedule an appointment. Here's an additional resource or whatever you want to have happen over the course of, 8 different weeks or whatever the case may be, as Brian mentioned. So then you'll be able to see when they do become a client, all of these different conversion rates and opportunity value and all those different pieces together here. So that's such a great and valuable piece of the process. But as Brian mentioned, there's going to be, because it's doing so much for you already, it's going to have different pieces where it's stronger and then other places where it can use a supplement or a complement, something like Gavel, which both of these systems can be used independently, but we're just trying to illustrate that because they're both so robust in what they can do, and there's different features that they're not competing with each other, they're complementing each other. Now we can take it from we've gotten somebody in the door, we've used our quiz, we've collected our information in a really strategic way. We understand what's possible to nurture that person and call them to action and kick them out of an automation if they've already scheduled a consultation with us. What happens in seeing all of the different analytics for how they came to us, what our overall, money is and how we're collecting it and what the conversion rate is and all of those amazing pieces. But now when we actually go to draft the documents all the way from, maybe even a welcome letter or engagement agreement, and then through to whatever documents we need to prepare. I showed you the examples of an engagement agreement and a deed already, but just those ideas of now that we need to actually do the thing that we've been engaged for, how can we do that in a really strategic way that repurposes the information we've already collected? So that's under this umbrella of automated document drafting. So the old way that we would do this, if you didn't have a Gavel, for example, even if you had a CRM like Leadli, for example, you would perhaps have your, do you like that?
Yeah, where's the any key?
Yeah, where's the any key? So you would maybe even just look maybe you would have the way, I mean, I actually practice law. You know, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 5 years, but when I first started, I wasn't really taught about all of the legal tech stuff and not even just legal tech, just how does tech work in the legal world. So I had to sort of figure it out on my own. And the way that I figured it out on my own was pretty manual. And so I would refer to the information and then just like copy and paste and, you know, kind of duplicate my template and try to figure that part out. If we take, for example, all of the many documents, though, that you need to fill out in order to prepare or open a small estate in Vermont, in a probate example, there's so many parts of these documents that repeat across, and there's so many different pieces that can be automated. So instead of me sitting down, just wasting my precious time when I could be actually representing my client in a more robust way, I have to go through and say, this is going to be an orange unit, and I'm going to put in the case number here and the estate of here and all these different pieces. And then I have to do it again here and here. And then I have to do it again here and here and here. All of these pieces is such a waste of time because this part can be automated, as well as all of the different pieces around. I know this might be a little bit small in the recording, but if I can put conditions, I can add a question that says what options I have without a surety or with this or with that or whatever. And I can just have those be a question in a questionnaire that I answer this question once, and anywhere that it's relevant across all of the different documents, it will automatically populate all of those for me. So same thing for repeating items. We showed that example earlier where you're able to add multiple different things when it will be different from one client or one matter to another. So for in this particular example, this is a list of interested persons. So I can list all the different important people or interested persons in this matter and their address and their interest or relationship to the decedent and all these different pieces of information, and map that over to where I want that to go into the document and let that be different from all these different pieces. Having conditions around which box gets checked here, all of those different pieces, we don't have to do that manually or by hand anymore. Now we have this new process where we can create a more unified and streamlined system that optimizes the experience for you as the lawyer who's preparing this, and also for your clients, because they can actually get this faster in a more streamlined way. They can sign their documents via DocuSign. They don't have to print something out, sign it, and fax it back to you, or whatever your current or old process was. What we can do now is take advantage of these integrations, the fact that both of these systems have such strengths that complement each other so well. So once we've gotten the different new clients into the door, we've collected all in their information in that really strategic way, triggered our different action by moving in the pipeline or checking a box or whatever we want to do, then we can have that run, populate these documents all at once. And I'll show you what that could look like here for the filling out of the, let me just get to the right example here. So for example, this one would be opening a small estate with, in my case, default values here. So let's say you trigger whatever you want to have be the trigger. It's gonna make it to where whatever information you haven't pulled over, you would need to fill out, right? So anything that in this particular section, for example, I mentioned that if you have separate documents that you want to have conditions around when they show at the end, which documents you want to work on right now, you could have a section right here that says, these are the ones I want to prepare right now. This is really popular for like estate planning attorneys, for example, and also like family lawyers and probate attorneys, where you don't necessarily need to prepare an entire estate plan every single time. Maybe right now you just need to work on a power of attorney, or maybe you're just preparing a will right now, but you might want to have the option to prepare all of these documents at once if you want to. So right now in this particular example, I have logic happening in the background that says, if I choose petition to open small estate, but not appointment of resident agent, then only show the petition at the end and don't show the appointment of resident, for example. Then we can go through and see what other information we want to pull over from Leadli, for example, or this is just information that we have stored within. For example, you could have CSVs, which I think, Galen, you were on the call when I showed that. If you have things that are pretty default that happen a lot, for example, you're usually in the probate division or you're usually in the family law division and you're usually in a specific unit, you can have those be default values here. Add in any additional information that you need. Who is the attorney? What's the decedent's name? What's the petitioner's information? If you have that important party information, you can put that all here. And when you're done going through and adding all these different people, now we have all of these completed documents that pull all of that information, and it's such a more streamlined way than going through document by document by document and trying to retype in all of that repeated information. Pulling through whatever we can and having that pull across through. Actually, in this particular example, you've also, I did it a little bit fast, but what you can see is that each person who was listed as an important person who needed a waiver of surety for the estate administration bond has had their own separate waiver of surety with their own information populated automatically as well, because I've said, I want you to generate separate waivers of surety for each of these specific people. And that's what I was mentioning too around the checking the boxes for you, wherever that goes through, the witness's signature, the dates, as relevant to whatever date it was that these were prepared. And you can see and so on throughout all of these different documents. We've prepared about 14 documents at once in about 2 minutes. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the power of this new streamlined unified system and process of preparing your documents from that old manual way where you're wasting a lot of your time that you could be spending on your business, growing that and figuring out how to create more lead magnets to generate more business. And instead, you're able to kind of focus that time there instead of on this manual data entry. So that's one of the things that's really interesting as well in this category is that idea of emerging opportunities. So we talked a little bit about lead generation and magnets, but there's also the opportunity to consider different business models in ways that now you've saved a lot of time. What can we do to think and create things that can be standalone legal products? There's a lot of people who just use Gavel and Leadli internally. Their clients don't really see anything more than like the quiz or client portal perhaps, or client intake things, like whatever the client-facing piece of your business might be. But what you could also consider is how this presents the opportunity, since you're able to create client-facing workflows, ways to collect payments, because you can add a paywall since we integrate with Stripe. So you can see the integration pieces are making it to where we're connecting all of the features that are useful of these different systems and putting them into a streamlined process. So for example, we have Hello Divorce, which makes it to where you're able to, a person is able to prepare their divorce documents by themselves for a flat fee of $400, or they're able to have someone help them or a dedicated specialist for about $1,500. There's a package of like $3,000, I think, where they get 5 hours of mediation. So you can start to see how these lawyers they're all actually founded by lawyers, where they're taking their expertise in their field and they're turning them into legal products to increase and scale the revenue that they're able to generate from their businesses. So it's just another exciting opportunity and example of how we can think about how we automate our documents, but also involve the kind of payment process, changing our business model. So a good example of how you scale or increase the number of people outside of that one-to-one model of doing business is H2J Tech, where they were able to, during COVID, there was this process where people who were tenants could apply for eviction relief, but they needed to submit a particular type of form. So H2J Tech saw this as an opportunity to help people by creating that form and automating that process, and they were able to serve 40,000 tenants in 2 months. So imagine the possibilities of if you were able to create something of value like that, where you're able to put a paywall in front of it, for example, and serve that many more people that you could never possibly serve with just the billable hour model. So just something I wanted to point out and mention. It's not something that people generally start with as an entry point to automation, because maybe they haven't even automated their client intake process yet, or they still are manually typing in information into their engagement agreement. But I really want you to see that the purpose of this conversation is really to just show you all the things that are possible and allow you to start from where you are. So you can have an entry point anywhere you are along the tech process of implementation. You can start with just getting your client's information into a storage system that allows it to be more strategic. You can start with just using an appointment scheduler instead of manually going back and forth. So wherever you are in the process, just start somewhere with all of these possibilities in mind.
And on that note, real quick, if you don't mind just taking a minute, like I think that just kind of summarizing sort of from the rip, like how this flow might look, integrating the two systems. So we've already talked a little bit about like lead generation. You use the quiz as an example, but the idea that cute baby on the Zoom. The idea here that you can use Leadli to even manage like ads, that sort of thing, run it to a landing page that's hosted on Leadli, run your email marketing campaigns to try to get them to schedule the appointment. Once they do, having a form that they must complete, either at the time where they schedule the appointment, or you might email them to it right after, to get more information, so you know kind of what the heck you're talking about, as well as sending some information so they show up as an informed buyer ready to roll. We typically send out a short form to the attorney right after that initial consultation saying, hey, how did it go? Based on how they fill it out, other automations kick off. So you're not, dragging things from here to there. You're not manually updating a ton of stuff. We kind of work with you to figure out, okay, what should the options be in this dropdown, and what do you want to have happen? And then, at a certain point, they become they're gonna become a customer. We can kick that information off to Gavel. If you use another practice management system, we can kick it over there. And then everything that Brittany just talked about, the workflows, all of that stuff can happen there. So it's a very efficient way, kind of from beginning to end, to manage your firm. We work with probably 20 estate planning attorneys primarily, but this would work for any practice area, to streamline that. So I just wanted to kind of like, we talked about all of these things, but we kind of did it a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. But that whole journey, we're able to just save so much time, so much efficiency, and just cut out all the data entry that you might be doing otherwise. So I just wanted to highlight that again. Apologies if I know we've already covered some of that, so that I felt it was important.
No, yeah, that's perfect. And I think it's helpful to just kind of bring us back to what we're talking about, because I'll go a little bit deep into the technical aspect, and then we need to go back high level, go back into the details, go high level. So, but yeah, I appreciate that. One thing that also reminded me of is this question that you might have, that we talked about strategically using information so that's in a way that it's reusable. So you might be wondering, if you've been thinking through this process as we've been going along, is if for example, with the repeating items, which is a big part of, using Gavel, because there's this robust ability to add multiple children, multiple assets, multiple whatever. But if we're not storing them in Leadli and we're having to type them for the first time in Gavel, how is that strategic, right? And it's strategic because there's going to be things that you want to have live in Leadli and some things you want to have live in Gavel because of their different features and capabilities. So what happens in Gavel is you are able to store that information in a strategic and repurposable way because of the data manager. So once I've run through a workflow one time, so let's say, for example, I have triggered that workflow to be run and those documents to be generated from something that I did in Leadli, like moving the pipeline stage or checking a box or update or completing a task or whatever you want the trigger to be. That's going to run and be stored in Gavel's data manager, where we're able to then take that information. So I can select a workflow that's been run, and I can push it into another workflow. So for example, because it might be at a different stage in the process. So for example, I showed you the example of opening a small estate for a Vermont probate case. I could then take that session that I ran with all of the repeating item information. So you can see, I can see the important parties and the information that I said about them and all of the different answers that this person gave here on this line. And I can say, okay, I want to repurpose that information now, including the information about all of the repeating item, or in this case, important persons that I listed. And I want to push that into closing smallest state because I'm at that point now. So I only have to answer the questions that I haven't answered before, which in this case, which forms I want to populate. And then you can see that the Richard E. demonstration, Demetria, and Perry's information have all pushed through from that previous session. So we are using this in a strategic way and entering that information in a strategic way, even if it doesn't all live in Leadli as well. It's going to be repurposable and reusable here still because of that data manager. So that's how that works. So we have about 8 minutes left, or 7 minutes left at this point. So feel free to put any questions in the chat as I show you this last piece, and then we'll wrap up. But I did want to show you what the how of the process is when it comes to creating or building out these questionnaires in Gavel. So let's say, for example, that you have a template that is for anti-coercion insurance disclosures. So you would normally refer to some information and then like manually go in and type in the lender's name and the borrower's name and whatever else. So instead of doing that, we can automate and turn that into a Gavel workflow where the workflow is synonymous with the questionnaire. And then we can also, in this case, I want to show you a PDF example and a Word example. So the anti-coercion is the Word example. And here we have like a caregiver authorization affidavit. If I want to automate these forms so that I don't have to go through that manual unreusable process, you could say, I can just go into my Gavel account and say new workflow. I'd say start with documents, meaning I have documents that I want to drop in here right now. I would just drag and drop them into here, say next and give it a name. And then it's going to take me to a screen that looks like this, where it's going to use generative AI to suggest different questions you might ask in your workflow or your questionnaire and suggest the variable names or unique identifiers that you would associate with that. So what that looks like here is now I can see my anti-coercion insurance disclosure and all of the suggested questions that it's saying you might want to use. You only have to do this process once to create the questionnaire. And then once you have created it, all you have to do when you want to use it is say run or have that set up to be triggered by something that's happening within Leadli. So from here, we're going to go through and make sure that these different, I want to accept or reject the variable names and the questions that they've suggested here. For example, the relationship to the minor, I rejected that one, but I want to keep everything else. And then when I'm ready, I just go up here on the top right and I say draft that workflow. When I draft the workflow, it's going to insert all of those different questions into the workflow so that when I want to run it or have it be triggered, it's going to populate all those different questions for me. Now we're in a view called the editor view where I can add additional questions. I can move things around if I want to. And then I can also see that the documents have automatically been attached so that I don't have to do anything extra. I can also quickly show you how to, I can also go through and add any additional logic that I want to in the document. We have a question in the chat. Can we have a copy of video to share with staff? I don't do intake and forms, but I'm the only one from my firm that shows up. That's a great question. So yeah, I'm gonna send this video around. So I'm happy to send that to everyone after the video processes, and then you could forward that on to your staff if you want to do that. But yes, so that's how you would do that. And then from here, if you wanted to make any changes to the documents, like I said, maybe you add a question or you want to add some logic here, you would just download the document that you want to work on. Let's say in this case, I want to add something to the anti-coercion insurance disclosure one. I can see that the system has input all of those different variables for me. And if I wanted to add anything, I can use something called the Word add-in. So this is something you just download from the add-in store and you connect to your account through something called an API key, where it's a little bit, it's a very easy process, but one I'm not going to show like demonstrate right now. But what I would show you is that I can see the workflow that I'm working on right now. I can see the variables that were created. So for example, if I wanted to add one more place that the borrower name shows up, I would just say borrower name, and then I can format that as something like standard, uppercase, first letter capital, or title case, and then just highlight wherever I want that to go, and I say insert variable. So it's going to insert that for me. And then if I want to replace the document with this new change, I just go down, you see where my cursor is here on the bottom right. I just select which document I want to update. In this case, it's this anti-coercion one. And then I just say update in Gavel. So all the changes that I made are going to reflect here in the document, and I don't have to do anything extra. I'm going to save this. If I say run, then it looks like what I showed you before, where you're just going to go through and answer those questions. Now this process is over. I don't have to do anything else here. All I have to do is either run the workflow, assign it to a client, or have this be triggered from something that I'm doing in Leadli. So that's that process that we can go through to quickly and easily automate our documents, as well as connect that and repurpose that from other places, such as, for example, in Leadli. So I'm going to wrap us up now. If there aren't any additional questions, if you have any additional questions, I'll give you my contact information as well as Brian, so you can reach out to us. For next steps, you can go to leadli.co to learn more about streamlining your marketing and CRM process, figuring out how you can strategically intake information, have your booking calendar all in one place, for example, have that native, that kind of native automation space is really, really, really powerful, as well as how that connects to your Gavel account. You can also start automating your firm's templates with a free trial of Gavel today. I'll give you a link that you can go to here to start a free trial if you haven't already. And then if you are new to Gavel, you can use the code Leadli-50 for 50% off your first month. And I just wanted to quickly thank Brian for hosting me today. It was so nice to get to do this. We did one last year, I think in June as well, which was always really fun to see you. So thank you so much for your time. Yeah, go ahead and say
1000%. Let me just say that I threw our consultation link. We do a free discovery call. Like Galen, I know you said that there were some people on your team that you hoped would be here that didn't make it or whatever. That's totally fine.
Right.
We'd love to just spend a little bit of time with you, get to know your firm. Leadli does a lot of stuff. You saw some of it today. Not all of it is, you don't necessarily need to use all of it. You just need to use the parts of it that would help you, be more efficient and streamline your business. So I'll walk through like what that looks like. It's different for every firm. So, we, jump on a call. I'd love to get to know any of you, one-on-one. So yeah, and Brittany, thank you so much. This was a blast. Really appreciate you on this.
Thank you. And I think Bruce raised a hand. So Bruce, did you have a question? Oh, you guys are so sweet in the chat.
It was an accidental hand.
Oh, an accidental hand. Well, it's nice to see you, Bruce. Thanks for always coming and supporting me. If you guys have any additional questions, you can reach out to me at Brittany@gavel.io or Brian@Brian@popular.do and say that 10 times fast.
Say that 10 times fast. Do it.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.